Approval of minutes from regular meeting, February 17th, 2021.
So move to approve the minute.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes. Will there be any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on. Changes to agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to presentations. Oh, Corey, we need you to open your meeting.
So I'll call the meeting to order for the Appleton Area Hospital Board. All members are present. Mayor Tossel, Councilman Borstead, Kevin Shea, Corey Thorson, and Warren Rao is joining us remotely.
Okay, we'll move on to presentations. Variable bond refunding.
Mayor, council, members of the hospital board, good evening. Jessica Green with Northland Securities, and tonight for your consideration, we have some preliminary refunding analysis based on general market information related to the Series 2013A bonds and the Series 2014A bonds. Before I continue on, does council have any issue with me removing this during the presentation? Or is it muffled at all? I'll take it down for now. So what we would propose to do, you do have the refunding analysis, less my chicken scratch, of course, in front of you and included in your packet tonight. So I would propose that I'll just run through that rather quickly. You do have some action items later on in your agenda for consideration, but for now, we'll just provide the information as sort of a refunding summary and then allow you to digest that, of course, answer any questions, and then go through those action items later on. So as I mentioned, the city has the opportunity to currently refund the Series 2013A and 2014A series of bonds. The 13A series was issued to provide funds for the improvement to the community swimming pool, as well as to refund a few different issues related to street improvements. And then the 2014A bonds were medical facility revenue bonds, again, that were issued back in 2014. Both of those bonds are currently callable, and given the rate environment that we are in currently, we are projecting that there is some savings there to be had should the city want to move forward with refunding. So going through that first page, really what you're seeing here is the two columns breaking out the Series 2013A and the 2014A, and then the issue summary is the combined total of those two. So what we are anticipating currently is that the par amount would be $2,335,000. And then going on to the uses of funds, what we've got there is $2,275,000 that would be used to call in the outstanding principal that is associated with those two series of bonds. You've got cost of issuance here of around just shy of $60,000 at $59,197.50. And then you've got a small amount of rounding there, and council will recall the last time we went through the refunding process, bonds are issued in $5,000 denominations, and therefore we round up to that $5,000 number. That rounding amount is provided back to the city at closing, so you're using that for those debt service payments that are upcoming. I won't go through all of the numbers at the bottom of that first page. These are just calculations that our software does and includes for the refunding summary, but I'll direct your attention to page 2, and this is the debt service comparison. So what you're seeing here, the 3 columns on the right side at the top, the savings amount that we're projecting as of this last refunding summary was run back on March 3rd. So the savings that we're estimating over the remaining life of the bonds is that $242,220 that you're seeing. That old debt service, that refers to what your existing debt service is. So if you were to refund these, obviously that would be the old debt service, and the new debt service is representative of where we think you would be based on that general market information. Now, I did have, as I was driving on my way out here, I did have an analyst update the refunding information just based on the sales that occurred today. And that number is holding pretty steady at $243,726.36, so a slight increase. I would let council know that we have seen some volatility that began probably middle of February or so. We've seen some steadying of the market, a little bit of correction, but once there was some news of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the market kind of reacted to that. So as investors are becoming more confident about what the future looks like, that the market took a little bit of a swing there. So just letting you know that there is some volatility occurring currently. But we're seeing, like I said, some steadying the last couple of weeks. And overall, based on the sales that we saw today, yesterday, that rates seem to be holding for now. From there, what I'm going to direct your attention to is page 4. So this actually breaks out the savings by purpose. So this is the savings comparison based on the outstanding principal for the 2013 A series. So you can see here that the total savings that we're projecting is right around $57,000, and I'll go to that page real quick. As of today, it's around $58,000, $58,016.70. In the middle of that page, what you'll see is an area that speaks to the net present value benefit. So what you're seeing there is that net present value benefit is about 5%. Typically, when councils are looking at the potential refunding of bonds, 3% is about the sort of threshold for when you decide whether or not you want to move forward with the refunding. So at 5%, this one's pretty healthy. And then if we go on to page, I think it's 7. Yep. So this breaks out the Series 2014 A bonds. And as you can see here, the savings that's being projected is $184,687. And as of today, we're looking at $185,709.66. And that net present value benefit there is 11.16% overall. So well above that 3% threshold that we tend to look at. That will conclude my comments for the refunding summary. I'm certainly happy to take any questions that the council may have, that the hospital board may have. Otherwise, like I said, you do have action items later on in the agenda.
Jessica, and we're going into a market unrated, right? This is for an unrated analysis you provided?
That's what's before you today, correct?
Thank you.
How often can this be done? I mean, is this something now we're locked in for a few years before you'd ever look at it again, or?
That's a great question. So right now, based on this analysis, our call date is actually going to be based on 12/15 of 2029. So that's when the bonds would become currently callable. Now, there is some legislation, as council is likely aware, prior to about 3 years ago, we were able to do something called an advanced refunding, where you could call the bonds in ahead of the call date. Due to tax reform, that is not an option currently. Unless you are doing advanced refunding, you can do them as taxable bonds. But oftentimes, the interest rate obviously negates any of the savings. That being said, there's a strong push for reintroducing advanced refundings, as we're in this very low interest rate environment that advanced refundings could have saved cities lots and lots of money. So that's being discussed again. We don't know if that's coming back, but in the event that it does, you'd be able to call the bonds in ahead of the call date. But based on the structure that we've got here, we're assuming 12/15 of 2029 for the next call date.
This would take care of, in your savings, includes all fees or anything associated with redoing the bonds?
Yep, it does. So that cost of issuance that you see on the first page is what we estimate that to be. Of course, we'd get hard numbers from bond counsel, et cetera, so those numbers could move a little bit, but we're pretty confident with where they are. But the savings number is net of any cost of issuance.
Okay.
Any other questions for? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the 52 wing finance options.
Mayor, council, I'll stay in the hot seat. So you have a memo in your packet that Northland has prepared related to some financing options. As Willie and I were talking over the past few weeks and talking about some conceptual ideas for the building, we had originally talked about a community center project with a cost estimated to be around $4.5 million. As we were looking at that, we wanted to look at what statutory authority exists for that type of financing and some of the limitations of those particular tools. So in the memo that you've got outlined here, there are generally just 3 options for financing a community center type project, and they fall under general obligation bonds that are done via referendum, general obligation tax abatement bonds, and then lease revenue bonds whereby the EDA would actually issue the bonds and the city would enter into a lease. Now, there are specific thresholds associated with each of the different borrowing tools, but as you have seen in this memo, that really the challenge here is the size. So if the cost were to be that $4.5 million, really what the city is limited by is the ability to borrow, your essentially your threshold in terms of what you can borrow based on your market value. By state law, there are certain types of bonds that apply to your debt capacity limit, and that is 3% of your overall market value. Based on that calculation, what we've determined is that you have a debt limit of around $1.5 million based on the type of bonds that can be issued. Certain types of bonds don't apply and certain types do. When we look at options 1 and 3 here, so the general obligation bonds done via referendum and the lease revenue bonds, those would apply against the debt limit. You do have the other option of abatement bonds. However, with abatement, the city has already issued bonds with abatement, which limits your overall capacity. So for a $4.5 million project, that's likely not going to work unless you're going to kick in a good amount of cash. And when I say a good amount, about $3 million. So as Willie and I have discussed this further, we've talked about potentially a use of a library and having that number come down to about 1.3 or so. Now with a library, you have another tool that's not listed here. Those are capital improvement plan bonds. City has issued these types of bonds in the past. I believe it was 2009. Those bonds are actually retiring off this year. So with capital improvement plan bonds, in the case of Appleton, because your population is below 2,500, it doesn't count against your debt limit, but you do have a calculation that's done based on your market value. And what statute says is that your overall debt service for capital improvement plan bonds cannot exceed 0.16% of your overall market value. That gives you room for debt service of around $92,000 per year. So if we take that 1.3 million, we add in cost of issuance and all of that, what we get to is likely a structure that would fall between 20 and 25 years to make sure that we're keeping within that debt service capacity for those types of bonds. So I know that this is a lot of information at you all at once. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have about the issuing options for a community center type project or a library project. As I mentioned, libraries have another sort of tool that's available to them where community centers don't. But long story short, for a library type project, you would have the option of capital improvement plan bonds. With those types of bonds, a hearing is required. At the close of the hearing, should the city council choose to move forward, there's a 30-day reverse referendum period whereby the city could get a petition. That petition would need to be signed by at least 5% of those that voted in the last municipal general election. And at that point, the city, if receiving a petition, you'd have the ability to go to an election to receive approval from the voters. And if that comes back affirmative, you're clear to issue the bonds. If it comes back as the voters turning it down, you'd have to wait 180 days before you come back with that same type of a project. If it fails for a second time, you can't come back for another year. Now, if you go through the process, you receive the petition, and the council says that's enough information, we are taking that petition as sort of word that the community doesn't want the project, you can just stop. It just means that you can't bring it back with that same scope for 365 days. Any questions that I might be able to answer for you?
So the reverse referendum is the opportunity for the community to tell the city council, hey, stop, we're not ready for it. Yes?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're up for the library only, MRS design?
Can I?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Paul Melvin, City Council and Mr. Mayor. I'm here to answer questions that you have about the proposal for the pre-design study for the library only.
What handout are we looking at?
Am I wanting a tour with you? I mean, your firm thinks that it's a fairly decent building, right? I mean, you see, structurally, you think we have something to work with, right?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you to speak louder? I'm quite hard of hearing.
Okay, no, I was with you when we toured the thing up there. I mean, your
Yes.
group thought it was a, pretty stable building, and, I mean, we're working with a decent structure. I mean,
Yeah,
is that still your evaluation, or?
the building's in much better shape than I had anticipated from thinking about a building of its age and that has been somewhat empty for many years. I didn't notice any structural settlement, nor did I notice anything that concerned me with the envelope, or think of the exterior of the building, the exterior walls, the exterior roof. Now, I didn't go on the roof, but I didn't see any extensive leaking, nor was there extensive cracking. We did notice that there is probably some brick tuck pointing that would need to be done on the building, but that's normal for a building of that age, and it didn't look out of what I would think of as normal wear and tear for a building of its age. And the nice thing about the building is structurally, it seems that if it's a series of columns with beams, I think they might even be wood beams that hold it up, which then can allow you to take down a lot of the walls between those columns without having to think about structural augmentation of those if they were bearing walls, for example. So the building on first blush, walking through it, seems like it would be conducive to reorganization of it for use of a lot of different purposes, but in your case, we were thinking a library, community center, and an event center.
Your proposal, the one before us here, that's for us going forward and not including state bond financing at this point, correct?
That's correct.
Could you talk to us about what it would be like in terms of process to move forward with the state bonding option?
Yeah, so the state, if you were to try and access state bond funds, there is a whole set of requirements for the pre-design study that needs to be done in addition to what we would conventionally do. A lot of that is dictated, well, it's all dictated by the state. A lot of it is for the state to be able to have more information in making a recommendation on funding something, because you can imagine the microscope that all the projects are looked upon in the legislature. So the state pre-design study requires you to look at things such as alternative energy, high energy efficiency of the building, high water efficiency of the building. It requires the city to actually think through very clearly and demonstrate to the state how they're going to pay for the capital project, but also how they're going to pay for the operational changes that the project is going to incur upon the city or the granting authority for the next, I think it's 20 years. So there's an intensive amount of information that's required on the state pre-design form that isn't really necessary for you all to make a decision on. How do you want to go forward with this building? Our proposal is more conventional, I would say, to give the community the tools to be able to say, we have a concept, we have a general idea of how much that construction is going to cost. We have, what we've included is a look at what else could be done with the building that's not part of the library. Obviously, you talked about a community center and a rec center. So how could those three things fit in the building with the idea that the library is going to go forward, but you don't want to eliminate those other two possible uses from consideration in the future, because the building is bigger than what you need for a library. And then the other thing that we talked about when I saw the property was there's a lot of open land there that the city could decide that they want to do something with that. So what could you do? One obvious need in a lot of small rural communities is affordable housing, or any type of housing that would add to the housing stock in the city. So one of the things that we would take a look at is what could you fit on the open property on that block to begin to give you the ideas of how you could generate more money from this whole project if you chose to go down that path, which also then helps with your tax base over the long run by creating taxable property, would I think on the west half of the site, if I remember correctly, the orientation.
When you guys toured, you went through the 52 wing, the gym, and the daycare,
Everything.
right?
Everything, basement,
Basement,
locker
room.
rooms and everything.
You went through there, okay.
Other questions? I can answer?
I mean, I was pleasantly surprised when we walked through there because I was expecting a different kind of reaction given the age of the facility. But they didn't seem to be too concerned about the age.
Structurally, like the basement down there, structurally, if it was cleaned up, I mean, there's nothing wrong structurally with the building. I mean, it's like it was when we were there in high school, so, I mean, the walls and everything are good, so.
And you feel comfortable with the utility part of it, or is that gonna have to be a part of an overhaul that we look at doing something with that?
Well, the heating should be good yet, I mean, we're still paying the bond on that, it's not overly old. They must have put that in when you were mayor yet, I would assume. That electric storage heat?
I think that was before me, but either way,
Yeah,
we put it in.
It seems to be
Okay,
functioning.
so that was good, all right. How about as far as, I would assume if we're gonna do a remodel, we're gonna look at, needing to put them in libraries and want air conditioning, I mean, is that gonna be, did that look possible, what, we could get into that too, or?
Yeah, so part of our study, part of our team, so it's us, we're architects and interior designers. We've included mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers with us to be able to look at all of your systems, because that's often 30 to 40 some odd % of the cost of any sort of project. Any kind of building is the infrastructure. So we have them as part of our team to be able to come out with us, go through the whole building, look at what you have, based on their experience of working on similar projects, then give us feedback on what would need to be done to make the systems both last for at least the next 25 years, but also serve the needs of a library and then potentially a communities, other community center functions, like a rec center or an event center. Because you can imagine an event center, and a rec center to a certain extent, but certainly an event center, you have an empty room like this, and then suddenly this room fills up with, let's say, 40 people. The mechanical systems needed to keep people comfortable in that type of environment are very different from what you need for a school, which has less diffuse amount or density of people in the building. So that's included as part of our proposal. And then we also have a cost estimator to then take all of our information and give you an idea of what all that's going to cost, so that you can obviously make a good decision of, is this a good pursuit for you to undertake or not?
So if I hear you correctly, we're looking at the library part of it, which I'm not against. Would the gym be able to be left alone, that part of it, the gym auditorium area, could be left alone for a while and we still have a decent building and not
I
too
think
many
it was
issues?
just, weren't you just talking the wings, the rooms of the 52 wing, just like opening maybe the north end of it and
Right.
leaving some classrooms the way they are yet?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, we could leave the other parts that we're not gonna alone and we could have that be workable for a
And I
couple of
think
years
you
to
were
get our
leaving the daycare alone too, correct?
Yeah, so part of the study is to meet with we call them stakeholders, because sometimes it can be community groups, it can be different functions of the city, the library board, And we'll get input from you if there are preferences to try and retain some of the tenants or try and keep some of the spaces of the building available for other use as it goes forward. Because frankly, you have a bigger building than you need for the library, so the plan needs to not only address what you're gonna do with the library space, but what are you gonna do with the rest of the building? And it's not the rest of the building is not necessarily studied in the same detail as the library. But if you have a desire to use other portions of the building for specific purposes, let's say for the daycare, or you want to still keep the auditorium and the stage gym area available for people for exercise or other uses, I think that makes sense, and we would feed that into our design process to think about how you allocate space in the building.
Okay.
My question is, and maybe it's in here and nope, there we go. My question is, and maybe it was in here, I just didn't see it yet, but how many net square feet gain are we gonna be looking at for the library?
So the library right now is, I believe, it is about 2,200, 2,400 square feet. And based on the information, when we did a study back in 2014 for the library, we were looking at that time that the library would want about 10,700 square feet. Now, some of that 10,700 square feet can be shared space, for example, classroom space and meeting space, could be shared with other functions. So we had done a study if the library had moved into the old Pioneer Public TV building, the 1980s building, and then thinking about the ground floor of the old City Hall, the historic City Hall building, the classroom space that the library would have also used was gonna go in there, and that could have been shared with other uses at that time. And I believe at that time, you all were considering a distance learning facility connected with Midwest, the technical college. So while we say 10,700 square feet, that might actually be pared back a little bit, but I would say roughly you're gonna grow 3 to 4 times the size of the library, which is commensurate with the community size. Your library is greatly undersized for the needs of the community based on Minnesota library standards.
Thank you.
What would you, could you help us kind of envision the improvements you would make at the 52 wing to accommodate that library, or what it would kind of look like without going as far as blueprints and stuff? What we could kind of expect?
Yeah, so you'd have more and better space than what you have now. So right now you have a lot of things packed into a very small space, which sometimes means that you can't serve multiple functions at the same time. So we would be primarily providing better space for adults, teens, juveniles, and smaller children. Smaller children, you can imagine their needs are very different from teens. Teens want a place where they can come in, often have computer terminals, they can sit down, do their homework, access the world in places that, especially knowing that your internet is not particularly great in certain areas of this region, which is typical of a lot of non-metropolitan Minnesota. The library is a great place for kids to go to be able to access the world beyond, kind of beyond their fingertips, so to speak. The adult area would also include what are commonly referred to now as maker spaces. And Cindy Hendricks, when I was talking with her, she has probably at least a dozen ideas of how to be able to better engage the community in ways that she hasn't been able to because she hasn't had the space. So certainly literacy programs are one of those, but programs to teach cooking skills and to engage more of the public in activities that you're unable to do right now. And a lot of this, I think, is typically built on libraries being centers of community. They're not really community centers, but they're centers of community. So the library in some ways functions, a well-designed, well-run library functions as a place for people to come to and gather and meet, access the world, access books, certainly access knowledge, but also create community. An interesting about public libraries is they're one of the few spaces that you don't have to pay for and everybody's welcome there. You think of there's not too many public spaces in our world these days that has those attributes. So they really do function as centers of community. Did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah, for the most part. What about, exterior upgrades? We talking anything about doors, windows, those types of things at all in this?
Yeah, depending on where the library goes in the building, I think it would be pretty incumbent that there is a dedicated entry to the library so that the library interiorly can be closed off from the rest of the building. There may be a desire for the library to be able to be accessed from inside the building, both for staff and for patrons, but that needs to be worked through with library staff and obviously city staff to figure out how that's going to work. One thing in looking at the building, you could tell that originally, if you can remember what that building looks like, there's the glass block at the top. I imagine that originally that was open behind so the light would come in. And then there's a row of what had been windows below there, and a lot of them have been filled in. One of the best things that we could do, and those windows are not in really good condition, so fortunately they do need to be replaced, which gives us the ability to say, let's just re-establish those windows. It'd be marvelous space in there. I mean, they were put in with the original building with the idea at that time, because you obviously wanted air to come in, because that was before air conditioning was really common, but also it brought natural daylight in. So it makes the space much nicer to be able to reestablish those windows. One of the differences, I think, with the library here and doing a new building will be, it will feel like a contemporary, not architecturally contemporary, it will feel like a contemporary space of this time, rather than a space from the 1980s or the 1990s.
No offense to the 80s or the 90s.
No.
Any other questions for him?
I'm very nervous about this. And so if you were to do a project like this, a remodel, I've done some new construction, but nothing like this on a remodel. How much variance from the original estimate should we plan on to do something like this? A 10%, 20%? I'm really scared we might find something in this thing. It's an old building.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that you guys didn't do a decent walkthrough, but at the end of the day, this baby's old, and I don't want to get into this half or even a quarter of the way, and then, so how much of a variance should we plan on?
Yeah, let me answer that in kind of you might think of it slightly roundabout way. I mean, I don't mean that intentionally. Well, I do mean it intentionally, but I think I'm going to answer the premise of your question. The pre-design report that we're proposing is a conceptual study to be able to early out identify what concerns we find in the building. So part of our process is for us to come back and spend a whole day, us, the cost estimator, and the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical engineers to come back and spend a whole day going through the building. So literally crawling through the building, trying to understand all the existing systems, looking to see and identify any concerns that we have with the existing building. As you kind of, I think, obliquely point out, a new building is much easier to predict because you can say, look, I'm going to put this into the building. An old building, you have to go in and do some forensic work on. Fortunately, the building is in great condition. I mean, it's old, it needs to be renovated, it looks its age in some places, but it doesn't seem to have extensive mold. My understanding is that, from talking to some of the city staff, that abatement has already taken place of the asbestos tiles that were laid down. So there was a good amount of information that we got just when we were out here on, I think it was February 22nd or 23rd. We will add a lot more to that when we come back, so that when we finish our pre-design report, we can be pretty confident that that represents a conceptual scope of work that needs to be done with the building. To answer your question kind of more specifically, those numbers can vary, I would say, anywhere from 10 to 15% in either direction. And part of that is that once we set a number through the pre-design process, that gives you all as a community the ability to say, okay, do we want to spend that much or do we want to spend less? Do we want to spend more? It's a part of a process where the municipal government and the library and the community really can have a dialogue about what do we want for our city in a community library. So what we arrive at is based on a set of assumptions given to us by the city for programmatic needs in the library. That can be changed through dialogue with the library and, again, what we refer to as stakeholders in the city, so that you all can determine, is this really what we want for the amount of money we want to spend in the community?
Thank you.
So think of this as a first step. It's not a, we're not going to hear, we're just going to hear on the process.
Thank you.
This $35,500 fee, that's what you're gonna do for that money.
Yes,
And that's a fixed rate. I mean, it says here it's a fixed fee.
yes. So if it takes us less time or if it takes us more time, most likely I think it'll probably take us more time, but that's okay. You know, I try to set the fee on what I think is, there's usually a difference between what it actually takes us and what people feel comfortable paying. So I try and find what seems like a balance between the two.
Well, I don't know what the rest of you think, but I think we should go with this so that we know if we go any farther. You know, and we'll have his design ideas and with some input from Cindy, right? I'm comfortable with that fee.
Well, and even if we don't move forward with it now, I mean, down the road, even a year or two, we can still start with this basic plan, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not something that we're gonna spend it and we throw it away, but we'll be able to use this, and if we don't do it this year, we can do it 2 years from now, or.
Correct. The only thing that would be different would be when we give you the cost estimate for what the building would cost, you would just need to apply a multiplier to that to account for inflation
Yeah.
from the point that we set it to the point that you want to consider it in the future.
But I mean, if you do the design with Cindy and you design a library, I mean, we can have that plan, and I mean, that plan can just be added or used at any time then. I mean, the
Correct.
mechanical and nothing's gonna change, just the price of the equipment and
Correct. The design of libraries slowly evolves over time. It's not as if there's kind of big jumps in what we do in our public library spaces.
Yeah.
You still do the same things that you did 40 years, 50 years ago, except now you do a lot of things with computers too. So that was kind of a big change in how you use public library space.
So when you stated, like you said, we're gonna start here, but we're only going to here, that will still be at that point 2 years from now. We'll start from there and move on.
Exactly.
Okay.
And as Ms. Green pointed out during her presentation, if we move forward with a capital improvement bond issuance for this project, there is a reverse referendum portion to it, and the community will be able to let you know if they're not comfortable moving forward, which I think will be important for us to consider.
Well, no matter how we move forward with this, I mean, we need to know what we're gonna do with that building.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's money we're gonna have to spend, cause either we're gonna do something with it, or we're gonna have to decide we're gonna have to remove it, or, you know what I mean? We can't
bet.
just keep supporting it and, you know, with no function to it, so.
Just,
Anything else?
just to, I know that not moving forward with the state bonding process precludes us from having to follow the B3 requirements that you mentioned. But that doesn't mean that we're not still aiming for sustainability, function, ADA compliance and all of that, right?
That's correct. We will still address those things, but not to the extent required by the state bonding fund pre-design report requirements. Because they actually require you to do detailed analysis of those items. And, you know, frankly, I think a lot of those things, if you're gonna invest large amounts of public money, they make sense, because you're having somebody outside of the community saying, we're gonna give you free quote-unquote money. So they want something a lot more detailed before they're gonna make that decision. For you all, you really need to know, is this building gonna work for you? That's what our report will help you decide.
Thank you. One thing for city council to consider too, if we were to move forward with the state bonding finance mechanism, that mechanism is structured such that we would first have to pay for it and achieve general obligation funding, present that, pay for it, and then be reimbursed. Another sticky little detail is how hard the deadline is for submission. It's coming up very quickly. So that's something for you guys to consider as well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Appleton Area Health Board Chair, CEO interim.
Did we need to make a motion to enter on this?
We're not doing that. That's gonna be a new business.
Okay.
That'll be a new business.
Okay. So Mayor Tassel, council members, before you should be the formal letter from the Appleton Area Hospital Board requesting your consideration to hire the company called B.E. Smith to do a couple of functions for us. One is to place an interim. The current CEO is leaving on March 26th, so there will be interim services needed until we find the permanent replacement for the CEO. So B.E. Smith does both of those functions. Their costs are in front of you. It is not the cheapest thing, but it is a professional organization that does recruitment. They do the vetting of the candidates, and they're gonna find us a good candidate or a good pool of candidates to choose from. We went through a pretty thorough and detailed RFI process. Mr. Morales and Kim Oxendorf, the HR director from Appleton Area Health, led those findings for us. They also then vetted those companies based on their experience with working with them. And both the HR director and city administrator Morales came to us with the board with a recommendation to hire B.E. Smith to do the interim and the permanent recruitment process for the next CEO of the hospital. So we ask for your consideration to hire them. This is an unbudgeted expense, so it has to go through the city to get approval.
Any of you have any questions for Corey?
I don't have any questions. That's pretty thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Should we let them close their meeting, or do they need to stay?
Are you needing to leave to your next meeting?
Yeah. Okay, who's speaking? Okay.
Just to clarify, the premise of the question is that, under your estimation, the city has involved itself more in the operations, and thus you're requesting that the city consider paying half of the cost here, sir?
Has
Well,
the
on
hospital
behalf of
board
this-
had any discussion on that type of a topic themselves?
No, we have made no board action on
I
requesting
think
the
that's something
city.
you guys need to discuss amongst yourself first and and then come back to us as a unit, one way or the other.
Well, you wanna,
Well, I mean, my feeling is, as mayor, that the city of Appleton and the citizens of Appleton are the owners of the Appleton Area Health Services, so in reality, it is our money already being spent, so.
Okay,
I mean, we're basically taking it from one to do the other. I don't think the purpose of it is needed, so.
okay.
May I?
Yep, go ahead.
Implicit economic gains, so the hospital would not have access to the market of the city of Appleton without the city's authority. That's the first thing I'd like to introduce. The next thing is, I'm not sure that I agree that the city is more involved in the operations, as the board still makes this recommendation for the city of Appleton to then vote and approve. The operations, the daily day-to-day functions of the hospital have not been altered in any way.
I mean, at the end of the day, I still feel it's something that you guys as a group need to discuss this and that. I mean, to bring it to us right from the, I don't feel that's right. You guys as a group should have to discuss that. And if you feel it's something you should bring it to us, bring it to us. But if it's not, then stop it. It stops. It's a board thing that should have to discuss first.
Yeah, the foundation of the hospital board has changed significantly now. We now also have a city council member and the mayor and 2 other people. So now the hospital, depending on where our president goes, you know, it seems like a very different structure for us to work with.
It might be, but you still have the 5 of you that need to discuss, I think, before it comes
Sure.
to the council. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be just bring it
Correct.
up like
And
now.
this has not
do it.
been discussed.
It's something you 4, or you 5 need to discuss, and then if you feel it needs to come to the council, bring it to the council.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
So we will discuss at the next hospital board meeting if we bring a recommendation to you.
That's fair. That's just my opinion.
Anything else? Corey, if you want to close your meeting, you can go to your next one.
Do you want to close your meeting?
Then you can leave if you want, and you don't have to stay if you close your, close.
Oh, do you want to recommend that to the city council?
So I would need a motion from someone on the hospital board to approve having the city go and try to refinance these bonds that we talked about earlier in the agenda here.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Gary,
I'll second that.
second by Kevin. Any discussion on the refinancing of the hospital bonds?
So just to clarify, before the meeting, our CFO at the hospital recommended that we include equipment certificate leases to see if we can refinance them into the process. And so we've added that to the city council for them to add to this process. Thank you.
And I
Okay.
think, wasn't that, Corey, that was the air conditioners and stuff they put in was part of that equipment, right, to refinance? and
Yeah,
transfer?
it's the splits that are on top of the building, those many boxes that are on top of each room. All right, any other further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So then I will call for a motion to adjourn the hospital board portion of this meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Kevin,
Second.
seconded by Gary. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The hospital board is adjourned. Thank you, council and Mayor Tossel.
Thank you, Corey. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Ward.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public comments.
Brian, you've been raising your hand?
Got it. Okay. Hi, Brian Wadlovich. I have not seen the B.E. Smith contract, so I speak out of some ignorance, but I've seen a lot of contracts in my day. And I wanted to just make an observation that, correct me if I'm wrong, you're hiring, and maybe this is the way it's always done, but you're hiring a company, the Smith Company, at how much per hour?
No, it's not an hour, isn't it?
It's not per hour, but they have a per week. It's a low 7,600, high 8,200
A per week charge?
per week charge. Yep.
Okay. And is there almost a built-in conflict of interest where the longer they don't get you a new CEO, the more they keep making money?
The initial contract offers for 12 weeks. It's severable with 30-day notice from each side of the parties.
Okay, so if they fail at a given time, if they're not getting around doing the job, you can cut ties?
That's correct.
Okay, good. The other thing I have is just an observation, and Dr. Kabata will have to forgive me if I quote him, but some years ago, during the infamous Jeff Cook days, he told me one day, my God, they're spending $500,000 for some damn consulting company out of, I don't know if he said Tennessee or Kentucky. You know, why aren't they spending it here on us, on our operation, on our people, our equipment, you know? And so I have no idea if anything similar to that could be happening. I just want to throw that out to you all, that watch out for the romance of hiring people in fancy-ass high-rise buildings with pretty letterhead that can suck a lot of your money when you can do things differently. You know, and heck, some of you have lived the experience of when Ms. Johnson from Dawson came in and helped out, and one way or the other, it started turning the operation around. So I would just ask to keep those things in mind and keep vigilant about it.
Can I speak on some of that, what we found?
You're the mayor.
Well, I'd just like to, we did research this thoroughly, and, I mean, we got a quote from Kathy Johnson as well. And per hour, this place is quite a bit cheaper than having her do it. And at this time, even if you take the high number of the per weekly cost from this B.B. Smith, it'll actually be less than it's costing us to operate it right now. So, I mean, we're not spending more.
Hold on a second, Dan. Say that again. I went too fast.
The money that we're expending right now to do this project, to have them come in, is
Yeah.
less than we are paying the management that we have at this time. So right now, it will cost us less until we find somebody.
Okay, good. All right. All right, that's all I
Just to
have.
share with you, because I hear what you're saying, one of the factors that was tested for in the RFI that the chair was very passionate that we include is that the firm does work with the community stakeholders. So not just management and staff and provider. The firm is to work with people like yourself in the community that may have something to offer about what they're looking for in their next leader up there.
So we expect them to go and talk to people like you and people in the community to get their input on who should be hired too. I mean, that was our goal with this company. They were one of the only few that did offer that, to go into the community, so,
Good. All right. Good, that's all I have.
thank you.
Hello, this is Lori Andrews. Can I speak as well?
Yeah,
Yeah, Dan, could you clarify what you said about, this meeting campus being paid less than the current administrator?
No, just the functions of everything. I mean, it came in, right? I mean, that's what we came up with at the meeting. I mean, that was the number we had, right?
Well, that is not, it isn't accurate if you're comparing to the current CEO.
Ms. Andreas, I don't believe that comparison was made. What I can say is that when looking at the 5 firms and Ms. Johnson was only able to offer 20 hours, and we're looking for a firm that could do 40 hours. And if Ms. Johnson were to do the 40 hours and you impute those values, then it would be very comparable to what we're seeing from the other firms as well.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, no, it wasn't you, Mike. I was comparing when we got the one from Kathy Johnson. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Any other public comments?
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about the policing in our area of Appleton. Well, I've just learned something, and I just talked to Cody. There's a number of thefts and things that are going on, people's garages being broken into. I've lost a number of things. I got 9 storage bins out at Eddie Tossel's storage bin out there, and 6 on the one side, and they cut all the locks off there and went through those storage bins. I got 2 semi-trailers down at my Chevy garage down there. It's completely under a street light. Matter of fact, right where the back of the doors are, there's a street light right over the top of it. They changed that into an LED light, couldn't be any brighter. They cut the locks off there and they went through those trailers. Right next to Don's parking lot, I backed my semi-trailer, or my car hauling trailer, and I had $500 worth of lumber on it. It was tarp and strapped. That up and disappeared. Now, last summer, I couldn't believe, especially on the weekends, you could walk out your front door and you could hear squealing from one end of the town to the other, by the same vehicles. You could hear he'd go from one end of the town all the way, and he'd race from the other town, he'd get to the other end, he'd squeal back, and he'd come back down here. I never ever heard a siren go off, or anybody seem to stop that. Now, I've just talked to Cody, and I'm under the impression, now, years ago, when we had the prison, we had 6 full-time officers, and we had 7 to 8 part-time officers. Now, I've asked the question, how many part-time officers do we have now? We have 2 full-time officers. And because there's only 2 full-time officers, they do not have the time to drive around our community and protect us. Sitting a police car out across the street from the ambulance office so that people don't drive highway speeds through town, I mean, I know there was some breaking in all these vacant houses, and I went around here and I tried to find a police officer in the middle of the night, and I crept all through the neighborhoods because I was trying to find out the kids that were doing it, because they were going up into my loft and they were drinking the loft of my Chevy garage. They were up there drinking, throwing beers. They put some styrofoam that I have up on the rafter up there, and they were writing stuff with lighters. I started to worry one of these blankety blank 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 little blank blanks are going to burn my place down, or what about all these vacancies that they seem to be? Friendship, I'm not even going to talk about all the ones that I know, but Friendship Manor's been broken into so many times, you might as well just take the doors off the building and just let them go in and...
Well, give us some time here with this stuff. We're working on it, Larry, so I mean, we'll take what you got under advisement, and we'll talk to Cedric, and we'll talk to Cody, and we'll see if we can work something out, so.
Okay, because I'm prepared to put a petition together, because I've talked to a number of people in the community, and they feel exactly as I do, is that a presence in the middle of the night, especially in a lockdown, because we were locked down, and that's when they broke into my stuff, and it was like,
Well, we'll take it under advisement, Larry, and we'll talk to Cody and see what, and
We're gonna
So-
discuss hiring another full-time tonight,
so, I
to
mean, we're
replace.
trying to get to that avenue, so.
So how many, does anyone know how many part-time officers we have on now?
What's that?
I said I can address that.
Yeah, we'll address that when we talk about the police department, so, thank you for your time.
Well, I'd like to see 2 more full-time officers on so that there's an adequate enough
Yeah, I know Larry-
patrol on in the middle of the night.
Yep, we'll try to work on that, but it takes money too, so.
Well, you know,
Gotta work with a budget.
all the money that they used to spend on these projects about what they were gonna do at my buildings and turn it into
we're
and
gonna
a
move
Ferris
on now.
wheel
We've got-
across.
We've got a lot of stuff to go through.
I understand. Well, I'd like to see something done because a person shouldn't have to keep finding his stuff broken into and vandalized and, because I shouldn't have to be out every night keeping an eye on my property.
I'd like to apologize to you for what you're going through. I've been the victim of theft in my life too. It doesn't feel good.
No.
I want you to know that every time you say things like that, I'm going through machinations of how I can address this. When I started my tenure with the city of Appleton, you had a budget that was not balanced. You had one of the highest tax rates in the entire state. You had more dilapidated buildings than anywhere else in the county, and we're trying to address those things, which also add to the vandalism and the theft that you're concerned about.
Yes.
But where you have an anecdotal observation, we cannot do anything without evidence. We cannot circumvent the legal process. We cannot sit here and make allegations or
I'm not sure what
feelings.
you're saying.
You're not sure what I'm saying?
No, I'm not sure what you're saying right now.
Oh, because
At
of
the end.
this?
Well, yeah.
So we have to follow evidence and data. We can't use anecdotal observations or feelings to make decisions. And we have scarce resources, and we have to deploy those as strategically as possible. And I guarantee you that what you're feeling is shared not just by you and your friends and your colleagues, but by us too. You've come to my office more than once, and you're welcome to continue coming. But I have to work within the means that I have. And I will continue to fight to expand what I have and what I can offer. But right now, we have just gone through a significant pandemic. Our community is trying to rebuild financially, structurally, and the spirit of the city is at stake that we're trying to get. And we're just asking for a little bit more patience. Just be patient with us.
Well,
We hear you. I see
We'll
you,
give you patience.
okay?
It's just I had that trailer 19 years, and it just upsets me. When I use that trailer more than, was my right-hand arm, and all of a sudden, it's gone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Northland Securities Engagement.
Motion to approve the city of Appleton engage Northland Security as underwriter for the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds, series 2021A, and the equipment lease certificates.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded for the Northland Securities bond underwriting. There be any discussion?
Great thing for the hospital. We're talking huge money savings. So,
Yeah, but that was my question on that, Willie, so now we locked that in at this time. No, I mean, our interest rates are low, but we're locked into that till 2029.
Until it's callable again, yes.
Yes, but I mean, I can't see interest isn't going down, I mean, we gotta be at about the bottom, I would assume.
We are unrated, so that affects that a little bit, and there is some market volatility. And if the legislator stabilizes and has consensus about bond anticipation notes and things of that nature, maybe we can do something, but it's fair to count on and reasonable as a call date of 29.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adopt resolution 2021-10.
motion to adopt resolution 2021-10 approving the issuance of general obligation funding bond, series 2021A, provided that the net savings are not less than $200,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Will there be any discussion? Maybe you want to explain that, Willie?
Well, we got her back here yet.
Oh, okay.
She's better than I am at this, so ask her.
She's better to listen to.
Thank you. Oh. I'll shut up.
Mayor, Council, hello again. So did you want to discuss further what that savings target might be? Okay, so as we talked about before, you've got the two separate sort of buckets here. You've got the 13A and the 14A. So you can do this as sort of one threshold that you're identifying, or you can break this out into two. Let me just get this up really quick.
So now this was, one part was a hospital and then one was the pool or not?
One is ours, the city proper, and one is the hospital.
Correct.
Would you
Okay.
group them together for this purpose? or-
Yep, she said you can do them together or you can break them up. Set up a threshold for each one.
Yep, so when we were talking earlier, so I don't want to say that one is unhealthy, but the more healthy savings is obviously on the 14A, which is related to the hospital. So that's the one where we're looking at savings being around 185,000 currently. So if you wanted to set a specific savings threshold for that portion, you certainly could. And then the other piece, the 13A, that one is where we're looking at, excuse me, just a second, right around 58,000. So, Mayor, I would agree with your comments previously that we are in a very low interest rate environment. And as we know, the market's reacting a lot to any sort of talk about the pandemic or sort of coming out of the pandemic. So what we've seen for rates being very depressed for quite some time, and where we see that trajectory from a 20-year perspective, and there's a cliff. So that being said, while we can't predict what rates are going to do, we would anticipate them going up over time, of course. So if the council is comfortable, I know that $200,000 mark was suggested. I would just say give yourself some room. Again, we're at that 242, 243 amount right now. When we looked at this back in February, we were around 292. So that drop from 292 to 242, that was a difference of around 30 basis points. So we have seen some stabilization in the market. Can't say what's going to happen over the next month or so. What we would propose to do, if we can move quickly, we'd try to get this done and back to you for your next council meeting, so a month from now. It will require some heavy lifting from Willie. But being that we're not planning to go through the rating process because of some of those challenges that the rating agency identified the last time we went through the process, we're going to try to hurry and get this done, is what I'm saying. But we do want to have you give some flexibility in there. We can't give you a recommendation for where that ends up being because it's whatever the council is most comfortable with. But, you know, set it in a way that if we're, you know, right on the brink of what you're thinking, that if we're off by $500 or $1,000, that we still have room to get it done if you want to. But basically, that threshold that you're setting authorizes Willie and the mayor to execute the bond purchase contract ahead of the ratification from the full city council. So it gives us flexibility in that the market's moving around, or if it is a particularly busy sale day for Minnesota issuers, that we have the ability to move by a couple of days so that we're not tying to a specific date and time. So that's what's nice about the parameters. You give us the direction of here's our threshold and where it makes sense for us to continue forward with the refunding. And if we don't meet that, then we just stop. So as I said, you can set this as one particular dollar amount. If you wanted to say 200,000, that's just fine. If you wanted to break it out by purpose, again, we've got around 58,000 on the 13A and around 185 on the hospital portion.
It'd be 243 then, basically.
Yep. So Willie, you'll be able to do the accounting separate if we do put them together, because the hospital reimburses us for their portion. We'll be able to get that figure to them, or?
We do it every day?
Right, but you could, if you combine, yeah, you do it every day because they're separate right now.
Yep.
But if you combine them as one, how do you, will you be able to keep the counting? Okay.
And you'll get separate schedules as a part of the transcript, so you'll see which portions are allocated to each.
Okay.
Yep.
My only caveat for you to consider is when you're deciding whether to use a gross figure like 200,000 or to use individual for the court, the independent bonds. Remember that if you are too sticky to specificity for one, let's say you set one for 40K and the other one for the remainder, and then one comes back within the range and one does not, then you have an issue because only one of them met the threshold.
Which,
This gives you more flexibility, I believe.
well, so the thing about, so with the 13A, so we've got a savings on a net present value basis of around 5%. So if we saw that number drop to around 30,000 or so, 35, you'd probably be right at that 3% threshold. And at that point, you may want to consider peeling that one off. And this is part of what's nice about a negotiated process is we have the ability to work with the desk on taking that portion out and continuing on with the hospital portion, because that one, again, is very healthy at 11%. With that being said, it is nice to have direction on both sides of it, but only if that's comfortable for the council. Because if that one portion, the 13A, were to fall below a savings threshold that's acceptable, then of course we're not going to meet that 200,000 on the hospital portion, because right now we're sitting at 185. So that's what's nice about peeling them off and doing them separately. We do have a little bit of sort of a hiccup related to that equipment certificate, because that'll be a separate piece. And I'm not sure where that one's gonna fall. And Willie and I were talking about this earlier. I don't think there's gonna be much savings on that portion. We're gonna look at it, but I'm not confident that that's gonna be added to this.
But my question is, if we're at 200,000 for both of them,
Mm-hmm.
what percentage of each would you feel comfortable with? I mean, we set the one then at what, 160 for the one, and then go to what, 30,000 on the 58, or, I mean, there's gotta be a percentage that you feel comfortable with, you know, with the movement of the market.
Does
Yeah.
MSRB allow you to give us that information?
I can't give you a recommendation. What I can tell you is that the hospital portion, given what we've seen in rates and barring anything crazy happening in the market, I think that one's gonna stay in the money and be a good refunding option for the city. The 13A, given that we've already seen this sort of spike in the market and that we're holding there and you're still at 58,000, I do think that that one's gonna stay in the money as well. But right now, on an average basis, it's around $4,800 a year. The other one is around $14,700 a year. So again, it really goes back to what the council is comfortable with. If we were gonna do this, you know, at 200,000, I mean, that kind of gets you into a position where you're saving, you know, 40 on the one and 160 on the other.
I personally feel comfortable doing the 200 that we have in here. I mean, that
Okay.
seems.
Yep, so do I. I like the
Yep, that
idea of
sounds
keeping
good.
them
I mean,
together.
I don't think we wanna hand tie it and have it where we lose one just because of the, then they can speed up the process too, I think.
I agree. I think we should keep them together and shoot for at least 200.
Okay.
And we may get more,
And you would still be able to work with the desk, right? If you see
Yes.
that one is dropping off, we can still strategize.
Yes, and of course, if we're getting to that 200 level, just like we did with the last refunding, if the market starts to move, you know I'm going to be calling you and saying, what do you want to do? And if we need to get the council back together, we can do that. But of course, we're going to be in communication over the next many weeks on this.
We have a lot of residents that are curious when we speak this Greek. Explain the desk and then the acronym MSRB, because I like to bring them into the weeds with us, so they can yell at me if they need to.
Sure. Yeah, so MSRB is Municipal Securities Regulation Board, and they just provide us with a lot of different regulation that we need to be aware of. So really, it's sort of the rules that govern what underwriters do, what municipal advisors do, et cetera. So we're always mindful of what those regulations are. When I say the desk, it's a sort of separate group within Northland, so brokers. They buy and sell bonds all day long.
These are your Series 7, Series 65 holders, right?
Yep. So with the area that I work in public finance. So we represent the city, but we work with the desk on selling bonds. So we're keeping an eye on things, the desk is keeping an eye on things, and we sort of collaborate when it comes to selling of bonds. I do not work as a broker. I do not buy and sell bonds. So that aspect of it, I'm out of. I'm always advocating for the city. But yes, there are two sort of separate branches of Northland, the public finance team that works directly with the city, and then the desk, which works with investors.
Thank you.
Any other questions for her? All right, thank you.
All right.
We have a motion and a second to adopt that resolution to put a $200,000 bottom on the savings. Will there be any other discussion?
But no, that's not written in stone, right?
The 200,000 is if it drops below that, she's not gonna sell the bonds.
Not less than 200, it states.
For not less than 200,000.
Not less than 200. We're good with that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, council, thank you.
Thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Motion to accept Appleton Area Board of Directors recommendation.
We'll have to table that, won't we?
BB Smith? No?
I'll motion to accept Appleton Area Health Board Director's recommendation to hire B.E. Smith to provide interim CEO services and conduct recruitment for the pertinent CEO position.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the board's recommendation. Will there be any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. MSR design proposal approval.
A motion to approve MSR's design proposal for the design of a library at the 52 wing facility.
Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Go ahead, Tim.
Motion has been made by Tim, or seconded by Tim. Will there be any discussion?
Just to clarify, that is a proposal that was presented from MRS Design by Paul Melblum when he was in the seat here. It's $35,500, I believe.
Well, the library's been very short on room for a long time, and that library is used by a lot of people in town, and it's very busy, and I think it would really be worth our while to look into it. But we need some blueprints to start with, so we can just get an idea what we can do with it, and,
I'm sure
We'll
we'll
go
get
from there.
renderings from them.
say that again?
I say, I'm sure we'll get some picture renderings from them that, what it'll look like.
Well, and what I like is we can use it, we don't have to use it for a couple of years, but we're not throwing it away, we can move those prints ahead, I mean, and they're useful in the future if it doesn't work, I mean, as far as our bonding and all that, so. I mean, I just don't wanna spend a lot of money until we really know what we're gonna do with our streets either, I mean, that could be a hindrance on doing some of our infrastructure if we get bonded too tight on that, but, I mean, it's something we need to look into, I believe.
The streets process through the PFA won't necessarily prevent your debt service as it pertains to this, because it's a different mechanism.
Okay.
And also, we need to have a certain type of necessary debt service to qualify for grants on that side of things too. But it is a valid consideration that you're mentioning.
It's gonna be nice in the community to get something positive moving forward. I mean, that's what we need to do is clean up and get things looking better, and this would be a good improvement, you know, cause I know Cindy does a good job at that, at the library, and she's got a lot going on, and if we get through this pandemic, it really pick up the pace there too, so.
I think it adds a lot of value to our auditorium there in the whole block.
And didn't
keeps-
you willing
keeps
to,
it
I mean,
valuable.
talking with Cindy, didn't we think that if we would move the library there, wasn't it a possibility to then hire another full-time to help her that would then possibly be able to have the 52 wing open for gym time for kids and possibly, or not?
As we have things falling off of our tax levy and the debt service has more room and programming increases, that is a possibility. One of the most exciting things that was mentioned by the design firm, the architects, was that they're going to be designing in mind that we want an eventual community shared space with a fitness center and maybe housing. So it's gonna be designed to facilitate the additional building down the line. And that is, that's a boon, because you're planning for success, regardless of who is on this board. It is a living process that gets left as a legacy to continue building upon as debt and finances allow.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Airport concrete project bid acceptance.
We have Mr. Michael Amborn from Rothenberg and Berryman, and he'll talk to us a little bit about this.
Thanks for bearing with us.
Thank you.
No, that's
It's a
part
real
of.
short meeting today.
That's all right. All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, we are here to review a few bids that we received last Thursday for the airport paving project. Just a quick recap. That project would entail putting new pavement in the main apron, taxiways, and a couple turnaround areas. These are areas that I've identified as high priority, in need of repair at this time. So we received 4 bids on Thursday. Very competitive and very favorable, so very happy to see those in, just given the climate of construction. And so Riley Brothers Construction, Inc. out of Morris was actually the apparent low bidder. This was done as a competitive bid process, so the project was solicited out for a few weeks, and so generally we take the lowest responsible bidder, and Riley's fits that right there. Their total base bid was $345,508.50 with 2 bid alternates. Bid alternate 1 at $14,374.75 and bid alternate 2 at $30,000, $656.75 for a total bid with those all together of $390,540. And what we did when we were in the beginning, or in the process of putting the project together, we were seeing that we potentially would have some savings on the base bid, and so we threw in a couple of options for bids that we could consider and not necessarily have to accept. But depending on where the prices are at, we could take them or not accept those. The first one, bid alternate, was to do repaint the runway. So it's just all the paint and all this that's on the main runway would be repainted as part of this project. So that would all be fresh. Bid alternate 2 was actually to extend the taxi lane that's in front of the aprons. I would call it kind of towards the northwest, if you will, about 150 feet. And so that kind of would expand that taxi lane. There'd be a little more room for a hangar to be built if that's the case, but would also kind of begin that process of going to the northwest and then kind of back towards the west, or southwest, I guess, if you will. That's kind of what's been identified for any additional hangar space in the future. That's kind of the area that we can go. And so it would be a step in that direction. It also, with talking with the folks that operate out there and the management, that where they push snow on for the aprons and that taxi lane now, they kind of run out of room on that end and it kind of gets piled up, and they would like to have an area a little cleaner if they could kind of keep pushing it. So this would allow for kind of that expansion. So given the favorable bids, it'd be our recommendation to move forward with Riley's bid, including the base bid and the 2 alternates.
And that's what, $450,540 total?
The construction piece would be $390,540, and then with the design and the construction administration, that total project cost, which is all eligible for the state grant, would come to the $450,000, correct?
And he's gonna say something that we haven't heard in a long time. Did this come in under
Yes.
expected budget?
Very, very well under the budget. And really, the main factor is which is the main proponent of the project, is the bituminous cost. What we are estimating is what we've been kind of seeing in the municipal market as far as streets and that, and over the last couple of years, and this came in significantly under what we've been seeing for those unit prices. So very thankful. The contractors geographically in a pretty close location, so, you know, as far as mobilization and that type of thing, I think helped in that effort, but that was the big factor that brought us down under budget. So with that, you know, again, what we'd be redoing now is contingent. What we do is accept the bids this evening. I would work with Willie, and we would submit a letter to MnDOT requesting a grant of a 95% grant from MnDOT. So the city's,
You have that letter in your packets.
the city's portion would be about $22,527, and that would be just based on the final figures with MnDOT with that, a grant, so. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
So when you do these projects, then are you the supervisor over the construction part? I mean, you oversee it then?
Absolutely, correct, yep. So we'll have someone out there during construction. That's part of our fee that's included in this, yep.
Okay, great.
Because speaking with Greg Ruther, he's kind of our manager out there. I mean,
Yep.
There's a few things, I mean, if you could just touch base with him, like cutting the ends of the driveways straight, things like that.
Yep, and we that's all incorporated in this project already, yep.
Because I just know we've had some water issues when we've had meetings out there, it's sitting
Yep.
there because it's
Yep.
just a bad spot.
Actually, when we were out there surveying, our surveyor was out there, and I mean, just but visually, he was noticing some of those things. So he was already making sure he grabbed some more information, and we already kind of planned on cutting those cleaner, just so one, it'll be easier to pave, you know, back up and tie into something, so,
Okay.
yep.
Well, thank you. I mean, over the last several years here now, we've made a lot of progress out there, a lot of improvements.
Yeah, slow, and really it just comes from the help of MnDOT. I mean, it's kind of I don't want to say the luck of the draw, but if we keep showing our need at the airport, you know, they have to consider a lot of priorities of the area. You know, there's other airports vying for, you know, for assistance as far as funding goes. But when it comes to the doorstep, you know, sometimes it's nice to take advantage of that. And that's something that going forward, we'll work with you folks and Willie as far as, there's always that city share component, correct? So we want to make sure that that fits into your operation as well.
Yep, and when we first met with those gentlemen came out from MnDOT from the cities, they always told us to make sure you have a wish list and you keep adding onto the end of it. I mean, I don't know if you work on that with him.
Yep,
But I mean, we never had one of them previously, so I mean, we want to make sure if there's something we need out there, we keep adding to that list, because it sounds like you can get it readily if
Right,
you're there,
yep,
so.
yep,
The wish list is a capital improvement plan for the airport.
correct.
And it's a living document. There are wish list items. This is one of those big ones, and I'm really happy that it's happening during our tenure here.
Anything else for him?
And I can attest to the procurement process that Rodenberg and Berryman did. They did it compliant with 471-345, Uniform Procurement Act for the state of Minnesota. So we're good on that end. I am in the process of verifying the surety bonds. I left a message to Ohio Farmers, who is a surety bond for the contractor, and they'll get back to us. Once that's done, we can go ahead and sign, but you're free to go ahead and vote on this matter today.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. A motion to approve the bid received by the airport concrete project from Riley Brothers Construction in the amount of $450,540.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the bid of the airport project for Riley Brothers. Will there be any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Rodenberg and Berryman.
There are some community members that do not yet have sewer and water services, namely at our Peterson Extension and 5 on the other side of the tracks there on Teal'c. And I'd like to, the city's authority to work with Rodenberg and Berryman to get a cost estimate for what that would be like to have those services extended over there.
Would we be talking any costs, just to get a basic plan together then?
Yep.
It would be. Has anybody from out there approached you about this?
Yep, one of the tax title foreclosures that we're going to discuss later on in the course of this meeting includes 501 West Teal'c, the former Rutland property that was taken by the county. The neighbors there, they're in need of services And we'd like to be able to know what those costs would be before we can offer that to them. And the Peterson extension, of course, they don't have services yet. And I think that our residents that value and cherish living in our community should at least know what those costs are if they want that option.
I motion to authorize the city administrator to seek a quote from Roderberg and Berryman for providing a study on cost to expand the water and sewer services to Peterson Extension and 503 West Tilkey.
A second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Will there be any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Brent Powers. He is our second wastewater and water operator contractor. And I would like him to introduce him to you guys.
Welcome, Brent.
Hi,
Hi.
I guess I took the mask off so everybody can see the face, put a face to the name. I've got 41 years' experience in the water and wastewater field, so, and I think Jim wants to phase on a little bit on the hours, so I'm gonna come and help work half-time. It'll be every other week. So, we, I guess came into a good time. You got a water main break right away. So,
What's happened is, I've been here like 15 months now, and the process of training, you know, our young fellow, you guys know that he's leaving us and for another job, so we kind of have to start over there. I thought by now that my hours would have been cut down, but we're finding more issues, and these water main breaks taking a lot of time the last 2 weeks. And but anyway, what I proposed was having Brent come in and help me, and he has the same licensure that I have, and the same years of experience. We have 80 years of experience between the two of us. But we're
still learning.
And actually, he started when he was 2, so he's 42, so he's got 40 years. But he's younger than I am, and I have no intention of leaving the city of Appleton. I just didn't want to have to be as tied down as I was, and this will give us some flexibility when one of us is on vacation or whatever. So
Vacation? You get what?
not yet. I haven't. Well, but
No,
anyway,
he's gonna get some.
But anyway, I'm to the point where I'd like to enjoy life a little bit more. But I understand that we have saved the city quite a bit of money doing it this way, and we'd like to continue doing that. In that light, can I bring up a couple of cost
Here we
issues?
go.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah.
So, Mr. Powers, don't learn from your friend here. Don't bring, he clears his throat and asks for money.
We recently discovered that, well, we've been having problems with our recirculation pumps. We suspected that maybe 2 of them were kind of small, so we had them pulled the other day and actually had the contractor take them back to their shop, and we determined that there was 2 3-horse pumps and 2 5-horse pumps, and they all should have been 5-horse pumps. And I can't totally recall what we started with in 1990 when I started the plant up, but I'm almost positive they were all 5-horse. Well, over the years, when they've been replaced, I don't know if it was to save money or what, but they put 3-horse pumps in there, and they're too small. And when the sludge gets thick, they won't pump it anymore. And that's what we've been fighting for the last 15 months. We've been having trouble with, we get a contaminated clarifier, we have to shut it down, clean it, and that gets into our filter. But so what I did today was I contacted the pump company, and I got a quote for them on the 2 pumps that need to be replaced, and it come to $11,500. When you size and price a pump, a 3-horse pump generally costs $3,000. It's usually $1,000 a horse. That holds pretty true. So I think this quote is close. So and like Willie always does, he wants a second quote. So I got a second quote today. Unfortunately, it's not totally apples to apples, but my second quote was $38,000. So I would like to get this $10,000 or $11,000 $11,500 quote approved so that we can go ahead and replace these two pumps.
Well, I think you need to, I mean, if you're having trouble with them clarifiers, that's just gonna get you in trouble.
That's the
down the
backbone
road.
of our system, and, we've been fighting this for the 15
Do,
months.
do you have any of those pumps extra on hand, or do you just put them in as you need them, or?
We do have a spare, but it's not configured for this installation.
Okay.
We can use it in the lift station, but we can't use it here.
Is
Just
there-
in a quick, a lift station pump has a impeller that's close to the volute. There's hardly any tolerance between. A pump that pumps 2.5 to 3% biosolids has to have a bigger gap between the impeller and the volute. And that was our dilemma. We tried to use this pump, but the contractor said it wasn't, the impeller was not trimmed correctly, so.
Well,
And we don't
so-
wanna do anything with it because that's our spare for the lift stations.
So what is your, I mean, I'm just wondering, how old are the 5-horse pumps that you have in there? I mean, what is the longevity of this?
I tried to look back in the files and it's just,
Well, my question to the city council and to Willie, myself, is if you've got 4 of them pumps in there, you have none on hand, and 2 of them are old, I mean, maybe we'd get a better deal. They're only gonna go up, maybe we should buy 3 and you can have a pump on hand, because obviously one of them is gonna go out eventually.
well, that would make it more comfortable. I mean,
Well, I'm just
we
saying,
have
I mean,
the,
by the time we pay a company the extra money to come in and we find the pump at the time when it goes out, I think we're gonna be money well spent to have some of this equipment on hand, because that's what's killing us half the time, is when you're putting out fires at the time. I mean, having the stuff on hand is a big deal in a situation like that.
That's a valid point. I have a question in that regard.
Yeah.
What's the useful life in your estimation of one of those pumps?
10, 12 years.
Okay,
I'd be willing to bet the ones you have in there are 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah, and that's probably with intermittent duty. These are 24-hour, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, so it's probably less than that, but,
and in full disclosure, there is a piecemeal patch that they can use, and I've asked them to turn away from that because of the danger of it not working. Can you please, in the long term, could you please explain the $900 patch?
we could swap the pumps, and, we could take the 5-horse pumps that have more limited duty, and we could switch them with the 3-horse pumps. But then, when we're trying to waste, we would end up with the same problem. We would still have a pump that's pluggy. We have to pull it out, and either that or wait till the incoming sludge gets thin enough that we can pump it. It's just it's a labor nightmare, is what it is.
Yeah,
It's,
well, I think the longevity of it will save the money in the long term by switching it.
I think what happened in the past is they just went with 3-horse because they thought they would work. Some engineer probably told them that the 3-horse would work, and they won't. And that's, we weren't the only ones that were fighting this. The people that were there before us fought this too, so it's an operational nightmare.
So the patch,
The
although.
patch would have been 900 for them to come back and switch the pumps,
Right.
and then we would still have the 3-horse, but they would be doing a different.
Well, are those 3 horses usable for you anywhere else in the
Well, I
plant?
was thinking, actually, after I talked to the guy today, I was thinking about actually trading them in if they would give us a fairly good trade. They do have both of them at their shop, so.
Well, I mean, possibly you could trade 2 of them in and get most of the 1 5-horse that we're gonna spare, you know what I mean, or get something. you know?
Usually they aren't really interested in used pumps.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But I'll try, if I can't get something that's, reasonable, I probably would just tell them to bring them back. And, we do have occasions where we need to pump some water, and we could use these smaller pumps because they're light, for things like that, so.
And the reason logistically why I authorized him to go and get the other quotes is because of the $900 patch situation. There are logistical considerations. We're down in terms of staff numbers. It would require more maintenance. And, we have them basically every other week, alternating days, and we're still recruiting for the department overall. And it's better just, if you're gonna fix it right.
Emergencies never happen during good working hours.
No,
That's right. Do you have an
It's kind of a
estimate?
good learning tool when you have problems like that, but, it got to be too much.
I'd rather go that way, I'd feel more comfortable with that.
How do we go about that? Counselor Member Borstead here just mentioned that, you know, if them pumps and we don't have, we should maybe just buy the 4 now, cause they're not gonna go down in price.
How many do you need?
2 now.
2 now and 1 spare would be really nice. I'm just gonna look here how many he had on hand. He does have, he has 4, coincidentally, he has 4 new 5-horse pumps on hand. But he has to get the impeller trimmed.
So
on. That's not gonna be an
$23,000.
additional cost.
No, well, I mean, that's labor to install them too, right? Or is
I
that
should
just
be able to
price
get
of
a little,
pump?
if we buy 3, I should be able to get a little bit better price too.
Well, even, how about if we buy 4? I mean, you should negotiate,
Then
if
we
we
would,
decide to buy
yeah,
4, I mean,
yeah.
they should do something for you.
Does that make
Well,
sense to you guys to have 4 at all, to you guys, or do you think 3 is adequate?
I'd rather see all 4 new ones sitting in there and keep one of them or 2 of them.
The used ones would be the spares,
Keep the 2 old ones for your spares and put all new ones in and start with a fresh.
We are using the 5-horse now in place of the 3-horse. We've got valves jerry rigged in. The thing is we have had some problems with the 5-horse. They haven't been near what the 3-horse were. But that would be an ideal situation, and we would be good all the way across the board. We could keep the 3s and the 5s for spares.
So, I mean, you aren't gonna get that much for a used pump trading it in.
No.
They're, like I said, about $1,000 a horse, so you got 2 of them at $5,000 a piece, $10,000, and the installation cost wouldn't be any more. There's $1,000 installation cost for them to come back and put these 2 in. So what I'll do is I'll negotiate a deal where he puts them all 4 in for the $1,000, and then gives us a better break on the 4 pumps.
Is there a way that these pumps have to be stored when they're not being used?
No, they just have to be drained and put in we actually store those in our sludge building, in the dry end of the sludge building, so. They just should be rotated once a year, you should just tip them over and rotate them.
Okay, so to the section of the agenda where we are approving purchases beyond the $5,000 threshold, we will add this.
Okay.
I think we gotta start being proactive instead of reactive. It's been a real bad situation we've been in for a long
Nelson's
time.
getting old, you know,
I'm not
Getting
touching
any
that
older,
one.
you more step.
I'm not touching that. You see what they try to get us into here?
So will you move that down the line and vote on
Yep,
it?
that, I'm writing the motion for it right now.
Okay.
But it'll be down the line. Thank you, guys, but before you leave, could you talk to us about that little leak and why we're letting it bleed a little?
I did get the contractor that we originally approached. He's gonna come down in the morning about 8:30, we'll get it fixed, but, it's not leaking near as much as the other leak that we had. So we've been letting it leak. There is still some frost in the ground. By allowing it to leak, the frost, it helps take the frost out of the ground, so, I know probably residents probably don't like seeing water running down the street, but it's not, the amount of water we've lost probably will equate to an hour less work because there's less frost, so.
So there are savings because the water will eat through the frost,
The heat from the water.
allowing them to dig easier, less manpower, right?
Whole hours, yeah, the backhoe hours, yeah.
And for my residents who are not into this, I don't get it either, that's why I'm asking. We're not gonna run out of drinking water, right?
No.
Okay.
We actually, our tower level today was 19.6, which is a normal level. So, and we had our clear well was full, so we were in good shape there.
So even though we see some water being leaked out, we're not in danger?
No.
Thank you.
And just so that everybody's clear, since Justin left, I've been taking care of the water system too, and Brent will be involved with that. He had a filter plant identical to this one, only newer, so he's familiar with all that stuff too. So.
I'd like to thank you for coming on board, and I'd like to thank you, Jim. You've done a good job here so far, and we saved some money, and we appreciate your effort.
We're lucky to have some guys like you with all your experience.
Experience is huge in a lot of this stuff, so.
It's hard to retire completely.
I just retired from the city of Dawson and here I am.
Well, we appreciate it, if there's anything we can do.
If
to
you
help
could
let us
resist
know.
the temptation of bringing these expensive things to my office.
Yeah. He sees me coming, he tries to shut the door.
I do. What are the names of
And
these
him, I was
pumps?
the same, like, what the hell?
What is?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to mosquito spray contract.
We do the mosquito spraying for Mylan. It works really well. They love our help, and we love some money we can earn. So I recommend in favor of this.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to allow the city of Appleton to enter into contract with the city of Milan for the provision of mosquito spraying services.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Will there be any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Special election.
Emma, this is you.
Mayor, Council, in your packet, I have a letter. It's just outlining the dates for the special election to fill the vacancy that was identified in January that Mr. Rittenauer is filling currently. Because of reporting, or of the publishing deadlines and all the things the state requires for day-wise, the two dates that are left for the year that we would be eligible for doing a special election is August 10th and November 2nd. These are two of the special uniform election dates in the state of Minnesota. And if we went with the August 10th one, the first notice we would have to give to the public is May 14th. So while May seems not that, or seems a little far away, it's not, it's coming up fast because we would have to notify the public and the county, and we would have to make sure we could get all of our election judges and get everything coordinated by August 10th. With the November 2nd election, it's the same day that a general election would be held in November every year. That one gives us a little more breathing room to start giving notices to the public, but I wanted to lay out all the dates for you and let the council decide when they would like to have a special election.
Would this be less cost to us to go for the November 2nd than the August 10th?
No. No, because we still have to get election judges, we still have to have, it's gonna be the same cost either way, because of the staffing.
Normal election this year.
It'll be the same typical cost not associated with the general election that we had last year, right?
Right, it wouldn't be well, some of the same costs, because we still pay the election judges the same amount, but it's not gonna be as big, I guess you could say. But yeah, we still have to do the 8 to 8. We still have to, feed our judges and stuff like that.
Pretty much the same.
But there's not as many filing notices and stuff.
Am I thinking wrong if I say a lot of people are taking vacations at that time, and would we have a better, more people at our election if we did November?
That's a democratic
I mean,
approach.
I don't know if it's a real impact or not, it's just one.
They're getting closer to school though at August. I mean,
Yeah, it's after, well, it ain't Labor Day yet.
I just know a lot of people are pretty busy in their summers, and I think we'd have a better turnout in November.
I just want to say that I support the idea of having it when we can have the most turnout, regardless of whether or not I run or anything along those lines. I think we want to afford the opportunity for the largest amount of our voters to participate. And that's just my 2 cents worth.
I'll make a motion that we set the special election on November 2nd.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded for November 2nd. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Board assessment and equalization.
Yep, this is the board that you participate on, Mr. Silty. We have to set that for the next meeting, right?
yep.
Motion to set the Board of Assessment and Equalization hearing for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 at 5:30 PM.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded to have the assessment equalization hearing Wednesday, April 21st. Will there be any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Tom Rice Foundation funds.
So the estate of Tom Rice, his sister, set up some money for the city of Appleton to receive in order to sponsor the summer concert series or historical function. Mr. Tom Rice is beloved in the community and liked the community concert series. There is an amount in there of $983.23 that they are requesting for that very purpose, and I recommend that we allow them to use those funds for that.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the available funds in the Tom Rice Foundation to be provided to the community band for purposes of a summer concert series in 2021.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded for the summer concert series. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Fire Relief Association, officers.
Motion to approve the Appleton Firefighters Relief Association officers list for 2021.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded for the officers of the Firefighter Relief Association. Will there be any other discussion?
Just want to thank those firefighters for all they do for our community and can't be in there when we need them.
Exactly. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Bid for purchase of parcel roll Asian buildings.
Mike, you can join us. Sorry, Cedric. So Mr. and Mrs. Borset are looking to make a bid to purchase the parcel where the Asian building was demolished. That was in the paper for the 2 weeks. We have not had anybody else bid on the project. It did cost the city about $79,000 to tear down. I know the city was interested in making sure that there's some sort of development effort when it gets purchased. So I've invited Mr. Borset to talk to us about that a little bit.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Morales. Yes, we put the $100 bid on the property in lieu of our progress moving forward with my wife's business at the Reinvented Boutique. We do have future plans for expanding the business and without embellishing too much on what we want to do, because we would kind of like to get the wheels in motion. And it's going to be, at least to us, a fair investment of money to accomplish kind of what we want to do. I can say with the property on bid here, no structure is going to be built on it as far as a building goes, but it's going to kind of fit into the whole project, what we're looking to accomplish there. So that's kind of about all I can really throw on that, other that we will take good care of the property, and when we do the improvements on it, there's going to be some more hardscapes there than just grass. So that much I can say. So I hope that's enough information for right now.
What about a little bit of a timeline, maybe?
Well, we're currently talking with the current owner of the buildings and trying to arrange a purchase on that. So we're probably realistically 1.5 years, 2 years out, just with Tammy only being currently basically in business for 6 months. You know, with the pandemic and stuff, she had to kind of be closed down for a period of time. So we kind of want to get a year and a half under her belt, and then we can start moving forward, you know, with investing more money into it. But we really wanted to get her roots kind of grown into that business first before we start with kind of like the phase 2 of what we're thinking about doing there. And we're also looking at possibly purchasing the building in between us and the bank to kind of tie everything together. And the bank and we've also talked, and they would like to see that building, you know, kind of occupied for improvements, so it kind of enhances that whole half of the block there. So that's our plan right now, and I wish I had a better timeline, but I would say 1.5 years, you know, to 2 years before we implement the second part of our business. But there would be something happening to that lot prior to that if we got the property, so.
Rehabilitation of Main Street is a focus of mine right now, and it sounds like rehabilitation to me.
Yep. And I believe, I haven't measured that lot off, but I think it's not very wide, 25 feet maybe. So I don't even know if you can build anything on it, to tell you the truth. I have never checked into the codes or anything, but as far as putting a structure up, you know, a brick and mortar building, I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah, I'm sure
So I haven't really checked into that, so. But what we're thinking about using it for I believe it would fit in just perfect, so.
So I turned this over to the city council. You guys gave me a task to start the process of revitalizing the community, starting with downtown. Together, we did the demolition for the building that was on the parcel, and now you have a couple of options. You can accept the bid, you can draw it out a little more, see if anybody else would bid. You could engage a services or realty agency if they want to put it on the market. These are all of your options, and this is where I turn it to you. This is not an expertise thing. This is about your experience of your community and where you think you should be moving into at this point.
I'd be for moving toward letting him have it for the bid of $100. We have enough vacant properties that we can move things into if people wanna come to Main Street, you know, I mean, there's other avenues, so.
I would also like to say that if something really solid wanted to move in there, that was, you know, just a shining star, we would have zero problem working with whoever. You know, if it was just something that was totally cool, that would be fine with us.
Okay. That's my opinion on it.
You just read them off?
Yeah, read off whatever one, I mean, if nobody wants to
Yeah.
do it, we can always.
I'll do a motion to accept the option one.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the $100 bid for the agent building parcel. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Congratulations, Mike.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Make the best of it.
What's next?
RLF board appointment.
So I'd like to introduce Miss Lori Tostenson. She is our new revolving loan officer for this fund here at the RDC.
Nice to meet you.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city administrator. I'd like to introduce myself, Lori Tossenson. I was newly hired at the Upper Minnesota Valley Regional Development Commission that's located in this building. I started January 4th. I am new to the public finance area, but I have over 40 years of banking and commercial lending experience. I have initially just, in my first week, closed my first CARES Act loan, so I went knee-deep right into it. So we've had quite a few applications for our revolving loan fund for the RDC. So currently, we do not have any applications for the Appleton revolving loan fund. And I just would like to share that I'm very excited to work with the city of Appleton. I live in Montevideo, lived in the Montevideo area for over 34 years, so I am pretty familiar with the area, originally from the North Dakota area. But the other thing I wanted to point out that currently there's probably around 152,000 available for the Appleton RLF to lend out. So we would be more than willing to help with marketing and get some of those funds to the city of Appleton. So if there's any questions or anybody has any concerns or.
It's too bad you had to wait this long.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't even see her sitting around.
I like to hide, come and sneak up on you. And I do have some business cards that I'll give to Emma if anybody's interested in taking those, so you can certainly contact me. We are still doing some remote working and in the office, doing some hybrid stuff, so I'm not currently in the office every day, but we are working remotely as well.
speaking generally, when reviewing the finances of applicants and things of that nature, in a position where maybe financial statements don't present strongly, or there are issues of going concern, is it typical to request collateral?
Yes, usually that is one of the main concerns and one of the fine points that you'll want to be secured. Some additional collateral that you can seek is personal guarantees or corporate guarantees, as well as an assignment of a life insurance type of policy. So there are tools that you can use to have some additional collateral, as well as equipment, real estate, the general type of collateral that you would seek. And in the terms of the collateral, that kind of defines what type of term you would use for your loan. If it was a working capital, it'd be a shorter term than if you would purchase a real estate. That would be a little longer term loan then, that you can amortize it out.
Does it change the quality of the collateral if they're not in the first position versus second position?
Yeah, it does, as far as your security, but in this type of financing, you're doing a gap financing. So your funds are there for that gap to help out that type of thing. So it's a fine line to weigh that collateral and your position.
Have you ever seen a unified collateral position? Because we work with the RDC so much and our partners at the county, if we had an applicant, for example, that needed help and couldn't offer collateral to every single entity for these different smaller gap loans, have you seen a position where you can offer a unified collateral position?
Yes, I have seen that already. Intercredit agreements where each of the different agencies will take on the same position and have a unified collateral position and work as within a partnership for that, and each have a portion of the financing package.
And the reason that I go through the Finance 101 is because we have people listening who may be afraid to apply or may wonder if they have to separate out their collateral for one agency versus the other. And what I'm saying clearly is to please submit your applications.
Correct.
So that we can help you.
Right. There are funds available, and that's what the funds are for. So, and it is nice to have a lead financial institution helping as well, but, that's not, it is nice to have working within the intercredit agencies.
Do you have any questions for her?
No.
Thank
I
you
hope
so
we use you a
much.
lot. I hope we get to see you a lot on here.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to working with the new appointees, and hopefully I can work with the city administrator whenever there's any applicants, and we can have our meetings and get some money lent out for the city.
Yes.
Thank
so
you.
much, and we're sorry you waited so long.
Oh,
Thank you.
it's absolutely fine. Good evening.
So now we have to finish. We have to put 2 city council members on there. So the requirements of the USDA for this RLF board are that there are 2 city council members, a member of the business community, and also a finance representative. Currently, we have Corey Thorslin on there, we have John Heineke, and we also have Mr. Eddie Massey on there, serving in the capacity of the lender. So we need the 2 city council members at this point.
It's you or
Why
I
not?
wish I could do it. I'm very interested in this, but obviously there's a conflict of interest with my brother being on there, so I have to bow out. Otherwise, I'd be very interested.
Don't all volunteer at once.
I don't know if I should,
Why?
because, well, I mean, it might be for a short term, depending on what happens
Could be short but
in
sweet.
November. But I would be willing to serve until,
Okay,
till that time, and then we'll go from there.
works with me. Oh, you want me to stay put?
Oh, no, oh, no.
Yeah.
Do we got
You wanna
2?
make that a motion? Yeah, Chad and Tim have volunteered.
Motion to appoint council members Chad Silty and Tim Rittenhour to serve on the revolving loan fund board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion? I just lost my train of thought.
Motion to appoint to the RLF board.
Yep, motion to appoint the all, motion carries. SCDP Rescue Income Plan, Keys Income Plan,
So I was calling it Royce, but it's, it's the reuse income plan.
reuse.
And what that means is, depending on which of the SCDP programs that are being used, if there is excess funds, this says how they are to be used. And it is a requirement of the program that we establish this.
Make a motion to adopt the Appleton SCDP income reuse plan.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded for the SCDP Income Reuse Plan. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Declare a hazardous building.
At this point, I'd like to invite Mr. and Mrs. Ripple to join us at the podium there. Are both of those mics working, Emma?
Yes, those two mics that are.
There's a green light on and you're good to go.
Thank you for being with us and for your patience. We know it's a late night, so thank you. Past week, we had our building inspector visit the property. You see a photo of the property, and consent was given for the property to be accessed. Building inspector identified south side of the building would need to be supported to repair the foundation and then back down on the new foundation. Damage to the first and second floor structure would need to be repaired. Damage to the roof on the south wall would need to be repaired. Once foundation walls have been repaired, the steel sheeting would need to be repaired. On the roof, north side of the building, we would need to see a repair. He indicated that the building has reached its useful life, and while he does not think the structure will collapse immediately, after this year, he doesn't know what the safety status of the structure would be. The statute, Minnesota statutes 463.151, as it pertains to hazard structures, does not have a set definition for what hazard structures is, or rather, it is a consideration of all the facts and evidence. In this case, you have the building inspector and the photo, and you get to make a determination if you feel the building is a hazardous building. If you do feel the building is a hazardous building, this is the reason that I called the ripples in. We need to afford them the chance to make these repairs within a reasonable amount of time. If they want to do that and they're able to do that, then we move forward. Then Minnesota Statutes 151, different section of that same statute, allows for a consent for repair or removal, which means if the ripples agree, the city can go ahead, make the repair or the removal, and assess the charge back to them. So that's what we're here for. One, whether the city council thinks that this is a hazard structure, and two, whether the ripples, for the ripples to participate in what a reasonable amount of time would be for them to make some of these repairs or removal.
I would like a copy of what you read, all of those things, because I
Will do.
I didn't realize what they are, and we would have to do some checking before we would make a decision. And he had planned to do that south wall, and he talked to Roman Fiddler several years ago, and he said, well, when you said we can't even see the wall because of the tree and stuff, and he said, well, you can pay for getting the tree out, and then you can see it. And we thought, he'd mowed that lawn for 5 years or maybe longer, I can't remember. It's not our lot, but we kept it mowed. And we didn't know we should have to take a tree down to get to our wall. And of course, we couldn't see the wall or get even to it with that tree there, because he was gonna do something with that wall a long time ago.
what I can say is this. My heart goes out to you because I know how difficult it is to have to make repairs, especially with short notice, especially when you thought you were doing what was correct. When the city hired me, a lot of my responsibilities that I was charged with was this very thing. And I'm so happy you came today because I wanted you to participate with us and tell us this very thing. So what we need from you, I understand you're saying you need time. So this is what can happen. The city council can make its determination, and in that determination, they can set a reasonable amount of time for you to start making the repairs or for you to come back with more information as well. Okay?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Administration. I was not there when the building inspector was there. I've not talked to you. If there's a list of things here that's be appreciated. The intent of doing some work on the building has been for a long time, probably 5 to 10 years ago with the tree and everything there. That's all gone now. That's fine. It looks a little tough. I've got about 80% of the stuff that's needed to fix it. The jobs are not that big. Consequently, 2 times I've hired somebody to come and do that work. They never showed up. What do you do then?
That's happened to me since moving here too. Can't get somebody to get my popcorn ceiling off.
But eventually it will happen, of course. And my intent was to repair the steel that needs to be repaired, and I've got the paint to paint it. So, I mean, yes, the building is sagged. Yes, it's old. I'm not young either. It'll last as long as I need it, I hope. After that, somebody else can worry about it. Yes, there are some things that probably need to be done there. I won't deny that. I've brought a lot of people into this town with that building, with the stuff, with the things we did there. We've not been open for a while because of the virus issue, and I'm not gonna sit there all day with 2 cars on Main Street. Sorry. Eventually, this is gonna somewhat change. And we definitely need something to attract people and cars on the street. My hope was that if I could get a little funding from the COVID thing to help with the repairs, it didn't happen. I got 0, I guess. So consequently, I don't have any loans on it. It's all mine. Where do you go and where do you go from here on? We'll have to do what we have to do if the need be. Of course, when that other building was there, you couldn't see it so good. Now it's pretty visible. Another issue is when that building was taken down alongside of us, there was they asked me to come in from the north, and I said that was fine. There's a pile of trash laying there that's never been cleaned up on my lot. I've talked to the county, nobody's done anything. If I had a loader and a truck in an hour, I could have it done, but it's not happening. I've done a few things with the building in the last, over the time, like a window that's bad, sealed it up, come back there the next day or 2 and it's all ripped off, vandalism. So I got to the point, why do it if somebody's gonna rip it apart? Sorry, that's not a good attitude, but that's the way it works. What else am I gonna say about it? It is what it is.
Well, you have to understand our point too, we get a lot of comments from people,
Yep. I agree.
The buck has to stop here.
I agree, and
And you've been here, Marlon, you know the deal.
my intention was, of course, to work on the south side there, and that's gonna improve it somewhat, it'll look decent, Like I said, I got the paint in the basement of the house, and the steel's laying out there behind the building. We get somebody to do it.
What about the structural concerns?
I beg your pardon?
What about the structural concerns?
Well, the south side has sagged somewhat. The north side has been propped up. It's been that way as long as I've had it. about 15 years, I guess. I don't know, it probably should be supported. I won't deny that. I'm not an expert. I don't know what to say about it, but it probably should be supported. You're not gonna get it back to its original position, but, and another thing, the roof, I fixed the roof. It was starting to leak, and I hired somebody to go up there and fix it. It costed me close to $1,000, and it leaked a little worse when they left than when they came there. Eventually, I knew what the deal was. When I sent somebody up there, we got it fixed ourselves, and it quit leaking. And that's the problem with most of these buildings around town that are gone. The roof was bad. Nobody paid any attention to it. If the roof goes, the rest of it goes. Yeah, so I've kept that up good as I could.
Marlon, if something happens, you know, the other day the window blew out of it.
Yep.
If someone's out there in front, are you insured for liability in case somebody gets hurt?
We have liability insurance, we sure definitely do. The window, I don't know what happened there. There's nothing one way or the other. Whether it was somebody threw a brick through it or if it just popped itself, I have no answer. There's no proof either way.
Most of it was laying outside on the sidewalk.
Yeah. Picked it up.
That's usually from inside out.
We picked it up and closed it up, and of course, if you want to take a look at my mailbox, somebody did that one for me too, you know. They crushed it. I'm getting a little tired of being the victim over there too.
You know, the declaration of hazard, I know the word hazard is alarming, it sends a chill through your body, but it's more of a motivator. You declare hazard and you determine a reasonable amount of time to respond. What I'm hearing from you is that your intention is to operate the business, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if their intention is to operate the building, notwithstanding your potential declaration of a hazard structure, if they have a reasonable amount of time to start working on some of these, I've just identified for you, sir, we have a revolving loan fund board that you should apply to.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing all your words.
We have a revolving loan fund board.
Okay.
Loan officer is just sitting in that very chair. This is what they're there for. Please apply. In the interim, we give them an amount of time to start the process. If they don't respond at that point, you can move forward with making a repair for them and assessing it to the property.
What's reasonable? I mean, 3 months? Or-
That's what you guys are discussing.
We discuss, and I mean.
I'd like to see a plan together much sooner than that. I'd like to see at least
By
a
next
plan
meeting, have a
and
plan.
an idea or something.
It's kind of hard to find somebody that can just come and do some work because we've had people.
No, but I mean, if you just have a plan so we know what you're going to do,
Oh.
we
Okay.
know that it's moving forward. Not that you have to have it done in a month, but we'd like to see what you plan on doing in that month.
Sorry?
That?
We have two people raising their hands. Mr. Mayor, are you going to give them a chance to speak?
A minute. We're not gonna extend this into a long discussion. Mike?
I just wanted to add, I was the person who called the police department that morning, the window was blown out, and I picked up the glass out to the curb. So, just wanted to let you know, we kind of thought the same thing, maybe somebody threw something through the window when we first came upon it, but the panes of glass were out into the street, and we picked those up for them and just put them up by the property, so.
Larry?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, when I've been here before, I was only given 30 days. Where do you go to get this revolving loan application? You're talking about?
The city website. And if you need one, I can print one out for you.
I need one.
Okay, that's what I wanna hear, that kind of enthusiasm, because these products are here for you.
All right, thank you. Well, do we wanna make this motion, and then we'll, set a timeline of the next meeting to have just a plan, what you plan on doing by next meeting?
I wanna just say, you know, to make sure before we do this motion, that there's complete understanding between the Ripples and us as to what the plan, what it's gonna have to have in it to constitute a plan. Not just, you know, like, do we want them to get estimates or what? So that next month comes, we're all on the same page.
So a plan, from the city's perspective, a plan is gonna include a general contractor license identifying priorities to you that need to be fixed for the maintenance and structural integrity of your building. That's what would constitute a plan here. That's the only actionable thing we can request from you. And I understand, and I feel how difficult it is to get people to give you estimates. People are very busy around these parts. Is the city council satisfied with my
Yeah.
expectation of a plan?
That, what she's holding there tells basically what they need to have done, you know, right? That's what they,
Yeah, that's
Yep.
mine.
Yep.
the issues that need to be addressed.
But in
And as a
fairness,
city council, I mean, we're not trying to target anything here, we're doing it as more of a safety thing for the community. I mean, especially when that window blew out, then we had people come to us with concerns, and then, you know, they bring up the cosmetics and then the safety issue, so.
As far as getting a contractor, just to give you a little example, the roof on the Legion Building garage is leaking, and we've been struggling for about better part of a year to get somebody to look at it and see what can be done, and some numbers and stuff, and that hasn't happened yet. We're you know, and by the way, not that I want to throw a little cold water on anything we're doing here, which we'll get back to, but tomorrow now, don't remember, Friday, American Legion, come and join us. We're raising money to fix the roof. At any rate, getting back to what we were saying, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. If and when you could get somebody to give you something. Like I said, last fall I wanted to do something, and a guy said, well, we'll come over, you know. Well, he never showed up. Well, we did a few little things what we could do, and
Well, I would say if you.
Where do you
could
go?
If you could get us the plan, or that, what Willie had mentioned, then go get a revolt, you know, that.
the loan application.
Application and see what you could get, and, I mean, we wanna move forward, I mean, and you have to admit, I mean, seeing that south wall, it doesn't do a lot of appeal, I mean, and not that we don't have a lot of other places that we have a lot of issues, but we're trying to take them one at a time, so.
sure.
And please explain to your contractors the special circumstances of what we're looking at today.
Yeah, I mean, just so we can get them by, you know, I mean, we wanna try to move forward as, you know, quick as we can here, just for public safety and that thing, so.
Well, I'm sure, but it's, you could get a contractor that's loose, well, that'd be great, you know.
Thank
I
you.
am right in this door here too. Use me. If you need me to get on the phone with a contractor and be pushy and get them here, tell me.
How often are you here?
All the time. I like live
I was
here.
stopped 3 times the other day, so you were not here.
Because I was at meetings.
Okay.
It happens, but I'm here and they know how to reach me.
Okay,
I would love to help you.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
we
we
speak
make
to
the
the
motion
motion?
and then put a deadline of the next meeting for a plan, right?
For a plan.
Motion to declare 134 North Mile Street as a hazardous property.
We have a second? And we gotta add do we have to add the time frame to the motion?
That'll be another motion.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you say that one more time, Dan? What did you say?
Well, we have to add the time frame to this, but that'll be a separate motion after we pass it.
Okay.
So you seconded, Tim? Tim seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to, should we have a motion to set a deadline of the next city council meeting to have
That
a plan?
is, I believe the date is the 21st, is that correct?
Yep.
April? Motion to allow for repair of the items identified by the city building inspector by not less than, well, we got dates here. Excuse me, I'll start that motion over again, I apologize. Motion to allow for repair of the items identified by the city building inspector by 4/21/21, next month.
Second, I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to set the date of 4/21/21 for a plan for the repairs on the building at 134 North Miles Street. Will there be any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Hazardous property removal by consent.
So we're skipping that one because we moved to the plan.
Okay.
By consent, that would be after the next one, and if they felt that they could not afford it, or they didn't want to do that, at that point, they would give us consent to raise it or repair it and assess the fees to the property or to them in a form of a judgment pursuant to 461, 1.51.02.
Okay. Public nuisance taking?
Yep. Minnesota statutes 145A subdivision, .08 subdivisions 1 through 3. Police chief, you can join us. Police chief has identified, and this is now going back a couple of years now, a public nuisance property, debris, garbage, etc. The county health board has declared and asked the owners to make the repairs and make the remediations, and they have not, and the county turned it back to us. So we must step forward to cure this public nuisance.
Is this the one over on County Road 6?
The address is listed
I
here.
realize that. but
That is
this-
correct.
Okay,
On-
all right.
On Highway 7 and County Road 6?
Okay,
Okay.
sure, thank you.
I don't know where County Road 6 is.
That sounds fine.
Do we have a motion for that?
Yep.
Okay, so, I gotta make sure I'm reading the right one here. It's the motion to authorize the city administrator to begin the process of seeking bids for the removal of the abatement of the nuisance pursuant to Minnesota statute 145A 08, subdivision 1 through 3. Is that the right one?
Yep.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Will there be any discussion?
Is Danielle on the line still? Danielle, we have a separate legal follow-up to this. I wanted to know if, since we've met all of the requirements of the statute and the county has finally pushed it back to us to remediate, what is the process, since there is, the owners do live on a property, I believe, in a mobile type of home, what is the process? We can solicit the bids and at the same time process a summary process to remove them?
Certainly. Where you stated that was what we received to what that may be, and you could see hopefully the lower bit. In the meantime, it's my understanding that, I can't tell, not how much you know, but I'm aware of my other files that are kind of the residents of that house. And so typically we also make progress to get tenants as well. But with that process, once we collect notice, we can also receive the other release. We can also go through the eviction process right now with COVID, there's a few restrictions on that type of thing. But again, we have some other avenues that, Chief and I are probably aware of, but I don't want to formally say on record, with regards to some activities, that that's another avenue that we can follow as well.
Okay, so the property is not only a nuisance, it's a danger.
There's squatters in the house right now, which we advise through public health and us that there was not supposed to be anybody in the house, but there is potential squatters here and there. But getting in there, to prove that is another issue in itself.
Because I just heard from 2 different residents of theft, vandalism. We need to do something about this.
Correct. Yeah, we've been working on this one for over a year and trying to push them to get something done.
Okay. So we do have legal remedies, Danielle, to go ahead and process summary process and eviction on more than one avenue. Thank you.
Councilmember Worsted had used the restroom.
Should we recess? Or can we just wait?
We can just wait, huh?
Okay.
Just wait. Yeah, just keep it to a minute, Larry. We don't.
Oh, no, I don't want it on.
Okay.
I'll address the council part personally.
I'm sorry? Oh, you want to talk to us after?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be short though, because I've been here long enough.
That's fine. Complete different council than it was when Roman and them were here.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah.
Notwithstanding your personal feelings, it is important that we do not tarnish the reputation or names of any former employees of the city of Appleton.
No, I'm talking about the change between the council now and what was before.
Okay, that's fine. We have to be very careful to protect our city. Even if the employees are no longer with the city, they're still my employees. I still have to protect them. So we need to walk a very fine line when it comes to these things, okay?
I'm not quite sure what your point is.
My point is,
We'll worry about it.
you made a comment, you listed an individual, we need you not to do that.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
All right.
All those that want.
Authorize the city administrator to begin process of seeking bids for removal and abatement of the nuisance property. We have a motion and a second. Will there be any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tax title foreclosure.
We have a number of properties, but these 2 are actionable right now. 23 West Royce Avenue and 501 West Tilkey are both tax title foreclosed properties that the county has. I'd like to be authorized to do as I've done similarly with other properties, move forward and purchase them at 0 cost if possible, maybe $1, depending on what it costs the county to process, for us to purchase the blighted properties for the purposes of demolishing.
Do we have a motion on that?
Motion to authorize the city administrator to submit the request to Swift County to purchase both 23 West Royce Avenue and 501 West Tilkey for the purposes of demolishing blighted property.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Will there be any other discussion?
Yes, the neighbors of 501 West Tilkey, the neighbors at they are at 503 West Tilkey, the Carls, they have an interest in possibly purchasing that from us once we purchase from the county for the purposes of them demolishing it, because they need a right-of-way to establish a septic system of some sort. What we have to first do is get it from the county. So that's what we're at this point here, but I did tell them that I would mention them and that I would bring it to the city council's broad awareness that they're interested in the property to their neighbor's property being demolished so that they can fix their septic system. Or possibly get connections for sewer or water utilities. That's why Rhoda and Berryman will be contracted to find out what those costs would be.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Private residence demolition debris.
There are private homes that are being demolished, we have very responsible residents in our community, and they are doing their part to demolish and clean up our city, and they're part of the rehabilitation efforts. We thank them for that. They're looking to be able to afford said functions, and we have a permit by rule site. They're asking for permission to dispose of their debris in that site. We have the room, we have the contractor here, he'll explain to us how much of size it would be, take up in terms of cubic yards. And I would just like to remind everybody that the current orifice for permit by rule site can hold up to 15,000 cubic yards. As a point of comparison, the Asian building was right around 600 cubic yards. So, you know, as Scott Collins of the county explained to me, it can hold up to 25 residential homes or 7 larger commercial properties. Okay? With that being said, I turn it over to Mr. Borsted to explain to us what they need.
Hi, I'm Michael Borsted with Borsted Rock and Excavation, and currently with these two properties, I have explained to the homeowners that if we are permitted this opportunity to dump in the permit by rule hole, that will hold the costs way down. And that is something I'm hoping moving forward. I know there's other people within the community that are very open, I believe, to tear these properties down as long as we can hold the cost down of the site dump there. It just about brings it down into half of what a normal bid would be, maybe even just a little more. So, and I'm trying to work closely with the public here and keeping this very affordable, you know, maybe more than normal, just so we can help enhance and clean up our city. And it's very important to me, and I've done this kind of work for many years here in Appleton, and I've tried to kind of be the guy that does it at a reasonable price, because I know a lot of people can't really afford, you know, even you know, thousands of dollars. So we're just hoping that we'll be able to at least use this site as a tool to keep the costs way down, and it does make a huge difference
Well, I mean,
in
we have to keep moving forward with this, even with these, I mean, there's no way by the time our deadline comes, that July 17th or whatever it is, we can't, I mean, we couldn't fill the hole anyway, so we might as well take everything we can get when we have the opportunity.
That's when we got July?
Yep, that's the
And that's
extension I was
coming up
able to
really
do.
fast.
and that's gonna be very
100%
fast.
behind it myself, so.
Provided, of course, that you provide asbestos inspection
The
certificate.
asbestos inspection will be completed, that is generally paid for by the property owner. And then with the demolition permit, you know, per the city to send into the state, and then the removal. But,
And then will you do the piling work, the compact?
and we've also had previous discussions with that. I will make sure that it all gets, I've been out to the site, and from what I understand, it looks like they dump from the top and then they push to the bottom. So I think I can, well, in fact, I know I'll be able to get a piece of equipment out there to get that done at no extra cost. I've given this quite a bit of thought, and I think I can find somebody to help me out with that. And
I'm sure they
'cause-
appreciate that.
well, we're trying to keep these costs down, because I know there are numerous residences that maybe with a little help price-wise, we might be able to push them in a direction to get
Have you let
these.
them know about the benefits that exist at the county for some of that
Right.
cost?
Right, and I don't know if the option is still open. At one time it was, I don't know if that's still available,
It
that the
is.
county will kick in a little cash. I don't know if the city is still on that.
2,500.
Is that still a city match and a county
Yep,
match?
We're
So,
trying to match, yep.
excuse me, so, yeah, and that's another thing that I can, and then I believe commercial, which I don't,
Commercials up to 75.
it's up just a little bit more, and so. Yeah, that's something that, if you guys decide this and allow me to, that's something I can forward to the people that I'm dealing with, that we have permission to get this stuff out to this hole without, any encumbrances, you know, that I have to worry about.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody wanna make that a motion?
Motion to allow the demolition debris from 336 East Schliemann and 735 North Munsterman be deposited into the active permit by rule site, provided that the demolition contractor furnishes the city of Appleton with asbestos inspection certificate and proof of asbestos removal, and that the demolition contractor or subcontractor perform the necessary piling work to accommodate and compact demolition debris deposit into the permit by rule, or by site, I guess.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Will there be any other discussion?
Just wanted to add one more thing on that 2,500. Is it still, back when I had worked around that number before, I believe it was a 2,500 from the city, 2,500 from the county, and 2,500 from the homeowner. I believe they had to match something. I just remember that.
I would have to review the policy, but it's something like that.
I think it's something, I just wanted to,
Have some skin in the game.
which is still a great deal, you know, for these people. So I just wanted to, if you could, you know, just
Talk to Willie about that.
email me back on that, or we'll talk.
We'll do
And
that, and just know that it is a reimbursement program. So
Yes.
they have to pay everything forward, and then we.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, they have to pay the complete amount, and then the county
But
and
then
the,
when the county gets the slips and you give them the slips,
Yep.
then they will actually ask you as a contractor if they
Yep.
paid you that amount of money and everything.
Exactly.
And then they will reimburse you.
yep,
And how they will ask you is they're gonna ask you
proof of payment, yes. And then if you could just give me some sort of timeline, I can refer back to the owner and when the repayment would be, so they know that, hey, we've got 30 days or 90 days,
No, it takes a
or
while.
takes a little while?
Yeah.
And just so if I can get a
So if I had
halfway,
to estimate for you, the last time that we did it, that we matched our side, the city got for the Asian building
Yep.
that we demolished, we got it within 26 days.
okay, so that, I mean, at least that gives, if people need to take a short-term loan or whatever, at least they kind of,
26 days from furnishing proof that the project was completed.
excuse me?
26 days from furnishing proof that the.
Furnishing
project
proof,
was
got it.
done, and then
Yep.
it was 26 days.
Nope, sounds fantastic.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson wanted to add something. Did you want to say something?
Is this being?
Yeah.
We're recording.
No. Okay.
Motion has been made and seconded. Will there be any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Swift County Fair gambling permit.
Motion to approve Swift County Fair Board Association on April 30th, 2021 and August 22nd, 2021 pursuant to Minnesota Gambling Control Board prescribed by Minnesota Statute 349.166C.
Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Swift County Board Association's gambling permit